Well, get your pennies ready because it's time to start stacking some pennies. Kim and I have Corey LaJoie with the flow here, and he's going to be flowing it out in the number 7 come Sunday in the Daytona 500. You ready to get the season going?
Yeah, I've been chomping on the bit for months now, all the way since the Burnouts on the Boulevard. We did the podcast there
fun, didn't we?
For the championship weekend. Ever since then, I just couldn't wait to get back to Daytona. So here we are.
You've been chomping on Built Bars, too. I had to do it. Sorry. The car looks sporty.
Yep.
Favorite flavor of Built Bar?
Cookie dough is probably top of the cake. There was a banana nut, but they discontinued it. Made me sad. So right now, cookie dough is the top flavor.
Okay. Well, you and I broke down the next-gen car at Nashville. We've seen this a lot. You've talked about it on the podcast. But now being inside of the race car and having it draft out there at one of our most iconic tracks, which, it's the Super Bowl of our sport and the most important race, what is this car going to do on Sunday with 40 guys in the field?
Know. I mean, I don't know if anybody has an answer yet because there's so many unknowns going into the 500 because we haven't seen two lines run side by side yet. A little bit in the testing. We also haven't seen a third lane form. We haven't seen cars really locked down to the racetrack and really riding super rough compared to the Gen 6 cars because with the shock stops on these things, the engineers can get carried away and make them ride absolutely terrible. So we learned how far we can go to make them ride really not good yesterday. So we undid a little bit of that. Hopefully we can undid. Is that even a word?
Sure.
Undo. Went back on.
Undid.
So
we undid it? No.
We're learning a lot. There's so many things to learn just on setups, on parts, things, and mileage, and what some weak links are as teams we're trying to figure out. So at the end of the day, though, when the pay window opens up with 2-3 laps to go at the 500, it's going to look the same. It's going to be everybody fighting for that Harley Gerald trophy.
How do you complete this sentence? 2022 will be successful for me and my team if – what's that if?
Man, my expectations, I believe, are probably always higher than what internally as a team we've set out to try to achieve. I think that if 2022 would be a success if we control the things we can control and don't shoot ourselves in the foot as many times as we did last year. There's so many variables that are outside of your control, especially with all these new parts and pieces and vendors with this new car. You know, you can chalk those up to mistakes or bad luck or whatever, but the things we can control, we need to do that, and I think we'd be better off than most. So, you know, it's not results-driven necessarily. It's not making the playoffs. It's not winning a race, because if we control the things we can control, then those stuff will inevitably come if it's meant to be. So, don't shoot ourselves in the foot.
You mentioned control. When it comes to the Daytona 500, there are a lot of things that can't be controlled, and it comes down to where you are, the right place, the right time, surviving, advancing, however you make it to the last lap in the checkered flag. But this is an opportunity for smaller teams and, you know, drivers to kind of even the playing field. So when it comes down to that checkered flag on Sunday, how do you get there? How do you get to the last lap?
You got to be in one piece, right? And I was thinking about it yesterday. For as durable as the bodies are in these next-gen cars, the suspension's a little less durable than what we had. You can't get in a crash and slide through the grass and just duct tape your stuff back together. Like, those days are over. If you get in a crash and you get a little bit dinged up, like, you're not going to be able to maintain pace. You're not going to be able to really probably drive the thing around the track because they're so finicky to be perfect, to be able to have any sort of drivability in them. So you have to really be conscious of green flag pit entries. Obviously, when those guys start piling them up, you got to try to do your best to miss it. You're going to be having guys flat spot tires. A lot of variables here to try to make sure you're on top of. And when the white flag, you're essentially racing to the white flag. We've seen these races come with a caution on the last lap. I don't know how many of the last years, but when you take the white, the next flag ends it, and you want to be hopefully somewhere towards the front when that does happen. And luckily, somebody told me the last three out of the last 6 have been in the top 10 here. So hopefully we can continue that streak.
Things get a little busy at the white flag. What about the stage breaks? Do you think with the uncertainty of this car, but the importance of stage breaks, will we see guys get aggressive or maybe less aggressive than we have in the past?
Yeah, I think in the grand scheme of things, a playoff point, this playoff will mean – they already mean a lot, but they will mean so much more for this particular playoff because now the teams and the differences are going to be so minute. So I do think you're going to see some emphasis on stage point wins. It doesn't do much to finish 4th and put yourself in a position to get torn up, but that playoff point winning a stage will be huge. And I think there'll be a certain amount of teams trying to race for those, especially the ones that are going to be in contention to race for a championship later in the year, which in our case, we know we're not going to do that. I mean, we still are pretty realistic with what our expectations are as a team. But, you know, for us, being there when the white flag waves is our number one, not for the duels, not for practice. Like, we're running the bare minimum amount to get our car driving good enough to maintain pace for 490 miles and pull the belts as tight as possible and jam it in there with 8 to go.
Okay, off the racetrack, I know that the fans who have known the sport have always known your name and have known who you are and your family, but now with the podcast, and we have the producer of the podcast, Janie, has behind the camera here at Media Day, so Janie, you're welcome for this content for the podcast. But fans come up to you and say they listen to the show, they like hearing the podcast, they're stacking pennies and right along with you. How cool is that, just to hear that the fans like it?
It's so bizarre that, you know, somebody would, you know, ride in their car listening to what myself and Chuck and Jonathan and Ryan and Janie have to just sit there and ramble about the sport. It makes you feel good. You know, people just scream stacking pennies. People recognize me a lot more by the hair, as you mentioned earlier. So my dad is he just stopped talking about it now. He's like, okay, fine, I get it. You're not going to change it, so I'll just stop talking about it. So it's kind of a brand now. You got to own it a little bit. Got some nice product in it at the moment. So
yeah.
I'm having a good hair day. I'm not going to lie. But, yeah, it's a lot of good things going off the track as well as on the track this year, and I'm excited about it.
Your son Levi is getting to an age where he's much more aware of things. He definitely has his own personality. Is that making racing and what you do a little more fun now?
For sure, especially, too, myself growing up with my dad racing, going in the motorhome, hanging out here at Daytona. I remember before they redid all the entire fan zone and things like that, there was this field, all the drivers' kids and all the, you know, there'd be 40 kids running around playing football when I was 5 or 6 years old. So it's cool to see Levi on his little Strider bike zipping around through the playground and things like that. And I don't know if he's old enough to really remember, you know, he's only 2. I don't know if he'll remember quite that, but hopefully I can stick around for another 8 to 10 years so he can really, you know, appreciate what I've been getting to do for a career as well as hang out and meet some cool people. But he's starting to know, like, when he was watching the LA race and they show me on TV and he's pointing and he said, Dad. You know, so he's starting to understand what Dad does for a living. That's pretty dang cool.
All right, another one on the way for the LaJoie household. You want to give the Stacking Pennies promo? Hit him with it.
Yeah, Stacking Pennies, NASCAR.com. Go check it out each and every week.
All right, you can't stack pennies if you don't stack the first one. Corey LaJoie hoping to stack it at the Daytona 500 on Sunday.